Hi, I'm here today with ECB Recreational Facilities Planning Manager Neil Higginson. Hi Neil, how are you? Okay?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Excellent, thanks. So thanks very much for joining us today. We're going to really look into questions clubs have sent in to us about the 2021 season. Now pre-season is well and truly up and running. I don't know if first, Neil, if you just want to just introduce yourself and say, what your role in the game is and how you work for Hampshire.
Yeah, sure. As a facilities planning manager, primarily my role is working with the county boards and clubs and other stakeholders around facilities investment. So that would be new nets, new grounds, anything to do with non-turf practice facilities, new pavilions, you name it, I tend to get involved with it. So works closely with Simon and the team down in Hampshire, along with 11 other counties and the whole of Wales as well. Aside from the day job, I'm also a level 3 performance coach. So I work with the Gloucestershire County Age Group programme, and I'm also the first team coach at my local club, Bradley Stoke Cricket Club, where, funny enough, I was having a chat with the chairman last night about the COVID guidelines and the impact on my particular club, which plays in an open park. So we have the other challenge, of course, with around spectators as well. So aside from the day job, I'm pretty well immersed in cricket, a bit like Simon, really.
Well, thanks very much. Yes, a great range of experience, I think, for clubs to draw on. So really, picking up on that first point, we had a question from a club talking about that generally spectators aren't allowed except under certain circumstances, but at the same time, clubs who have the facility can offer table service, roughly as they did last year, in accordance with the 2 households, a rule of 6. Yeah,
not really too much of a change there. Obviously, our guidance is there for everybody to read, but just to sort of paraphrase some of that, really, and bearing in mind that our guidance is driven by government, so what we publish has to be overviewed by DCMS before it is published, and that's why it's such a lengthy document, which I know is frustrating for clubs, but I'm afraid it is what it is. Spectators are not currently permitted at step 2. That's pretty black and white, to be honest. This obviously doesn't apply for carers, for people with disabilities and adults needed to supervise under 18 children for safeguarding and that sort of thing. But if you take the example of my particular club, they've taken the decision not to open their bar and any other facilities during a match. Players will be in their own little zoned off areas. Spectators can turn up, or perceived spectators can turn up to watch the game. However, facilities will be open after the game for those who want to have a drink with table service and such like. But it's really down to a club to make its own arrangements, really. And just be mindful of the fact that, and I be careful how I couch this, but some people will be looking around to make sure that cricket clubs are operating within the appropriate guidelines. And the last thing you want is your club all over social media saying you're not doing it in the right way. But every club is different, and all I say is a common sense approach, really, and make sure you follow the guidelines as they're set out.
No, that's good advice there. And I know that if people head over to ecb.co.uk/COVID-19, then the risk assessments and action checklists are available there to view, which will sort of determine how each individual site runs. Every site's different, isn't it, as well? So moving on to the next query we had, guidance on marquees at grounds that may not ordinarily have been there.
Yeah, another good question. I know a number of clubs local to me, I live just on the outskirts of North Bristol, have opened up marquees, and things seem to be going very, very well for them, to be honest with you. The ECB has not issued its own specific guidance on this. However, there is guidance within the government protocols and information, and also your local authority or council authority as well. Rough rule of thumb says that your marquee, 50% of it should be open to the elements. So obviously you've got 4 walls and a roof. Obviously you can open the roof up because that negates the whole purpose of, especially with snow and that sort of thing around at the moment, but 50% of it should be open to allow fresh air. Tables should be set at 2 meter social distancing guideline. And I think there is also diktat around the size of the marquee in relation to the size of your club. So there was an example recently of a pub in Wiltshire that put a temporary extension at the back of its pub, which was almost the same size as the pub. That was deemed not to be appropriate and they had to close it. So make sure you check with your local authority or council first before you put your marquee up, or go to your marquee supplier and say, this is the size of our existing pavilion in terms of square meterage. What can we have put up that meets the COVID guidelines?
Yeah, that again, great advice. I think you made a really good point at the beginning to say that this is advice that the ECB have had signed off with the government, the digital culture with DCMS. And those are the circumstances under which government has said cricket can come back. So we all need to pretty much abide by them, don't we? Really, you know, we don't want to get into a situation where perhaps people are being pulled up for not complying. The next question we had as well is last year. It was we know that every cricket ground is different, but everyone was subject to the same numbers that could operate at a ground, but that's slightly different this year, and I think that's governed by the risk assessment, isn't it, of each individual ground?
Yeah. So my club, for example, because we play in a public open space, they've done their own risk assessment, which covers absolutely everything, and you can go into as much or little detail within that as you wish. If you have any concerns, and obviously go back to Simon to start with, and Simon can liaise with me. And if needs be, I can liaise with my colleagues in the facilities planning team, where we have health and safety expertise as well that we can lean on. Yes, every club will be different in terms of its size, its location. For example, in a public open space, we don't expect members of the club to be going round and checking with everybody that are there to watch the game, because that can cause an element of disquiet, people being questioned as to why they're there and that sort of thing. It's taking that pragmatic view, really. But the rule of 6 applies definitely, as in terms of the bubbles. So household bubbles, the rule of 6, and also social distancing. So making sure that anybody that is watching the game, if they're not part of a rule of 6 or a social bubble, that they do maintain appropriate social distancing. I think there was a question around about usage of nets as well. As a coach, I'm fed up with having to wipe everything down after every session, but that's what we have to do these days. And again, use of nets is welcomed, but each club will be different. So if you have a 2-lane net bay, for example, you can have one net being used by one bubble and one bay being used by another bubble. That's fine, as long as the two don't cross over. That makes sense. And have an appropriate booking system. My club has one online, so you go online, you see when there's a slot, and you book a slot. So for example, you may want to start at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but you usually finish at 10 to 5. For an hour slot, so you've got 10 minutes for the coach to wipe everything down for the next slot to come in.
Yeah, and I think that's something clubs will be familiar with, and indeed I'm all booked in on my first session later on today, so we'll see how that goes. I think one thing that jumped out to me as well, and it's there in the guidance for clubs to find, is the direction on how to clubs can generate their own QR code, which I think could be really helpful. There is an obligation on clubs for NHS track and trace to record who is on site and retain that information for 21 days. That is probably the most admin light way of doing it, is setting up your venue as a QR code. Obviously not everyone has to complete that, in which case you would need to clubs will need to keep separate lists. But no, I think that's well worth looking up in the guidance, and that's maybe a good step on from last year. I think in general the thrust is, and if people can apply a common sense view to this, wouldn't you say, is that cricket games go on for quite a while, and spectators and large groups aren't currently allowed to be hanging around in groups watching it. They have to keep that separation. If clubs go from that starting point, is that a good common sense way to start off?
Yeah, I guess it's all down to communication, really. So obviously we have extremes of clubs. So if you have and I use this word advisedly, but your traditional club that has its own sites, its own boundaries, and it can control who comes in and out. So obviously you have your 2 teams and your support staff that go with that. They're all socially distanced. They're all set up in their own areas. That's nice and easy. If spectators do turn up, which could happen, it could be a member of the club who's decided to come down to watch the game, then that's down to you as a club, hopefully to either welcome them with open arms and keep it fairly sort of simple and straightforward with your QR code process and your NHS track and trace, or you've already communicated to your members to say, please don't come down to watch at the moment until June, because obviously then hopefully things will move on. There are other solutions. You can use YouTube. You can live stream the game these days, as some of you may have seen with the recent county championship games. So there's lots of ways that you can do that. But I know it's sort of counterintuitive that we're encouraging people to stay away during game time. There's no reason, I don't think, why they can't come down after the game, because then obviously you've got your table service and you're welcoming members back into the club, but that's down to you to control, really. Public open spaces can be a challenge because you might have lots of youngsters hanging around doing what youngsters do whilst the game is going on. Well, there's very little you can do about that. But last weekend, for example, my home and away teams were socially distanced. They had their own little cordoned off areas. There was no spectators from the club. There were people there watching the game who were just the general public, which you can't do much about. And the game seemed to go pretty well, actually. It was pretty well marshalled, and hopefully the same will be in play this weekend as well.
Well, that sounds great. And those of us who are just about to start, I'm sure will be looking forward to that. I know that in Hampshire we have probably at least 100 of our clubs use public park facilities in some way, and obviously that is an area which is in less control than say an asset owning club that can open and close gates. And there again, there's specific stuff in the guidance about that, which I think is maybe a step forward. I think it's fair to say it's shorter than last year's, but again, this is working in close liaison with the digital culture, media and sport department. So it does have to be of a certain length. On the other hand, it can't include everything, otherwise it would be too long, and that's where a bit of common sense or just asking us at the cricket board a question sort of just might come into it if you're in doubt. I think one other last thing that did come up. Sorry, go on, Neil. Go on. Yeah.
I think the frustration can be sometimes is that it lands on a Friday. So most chair people would have been at work Monday to Friday in whatever environment. This lands on a Friday, and there might be some subtle changes in it, which means you then need to think about what's happening on Saturday or Sunday. I know that's frustrating, but there's very little. I was chatting to my chairman about this last night. It's not dictated by us as your national governing body. It's coming from the government. And sometimes they don't sign it off until very, very late on a Thursday. And once it's signed off, we've got it virtually ready to go. That's when we hit the button. I know that's a source of frustration, but again, apologies, there's very little that we can do about that.
Yeah, sometimes it's quite difficult where if someone sets a target of we will issue this guidance in the week commencing such and such, it tends to sort of shift to 5 p.m. on a Friday because that target's been hit. Sometimes numbers could be helpful, sometimes they can't. I think one thing that's come up as well, we just had a query in as well from one of our clubs, is about indoors, which essentially, from the look of the government guidelines, it can take place in groups of up to 15. That's essentially it. And there's links to government guidance in the ECB guidance on that, isn't there?
It can take place. It is all linked to school activity, to be honest with you. So if you look at the indoor sports facilities guidance, they will then have a link that will take you across to indoor provision for indoor childcare and supervised activities, including sport and physical activity. So you can have groups of up to 15, as long as obviously social distancing guidelines are followed. For cricket, I guess really it's about individual activity or people from the same household, personal training on a one-to-one basis within the same household or bubbles. That's really, I think, what's more appropriate for us. I guess my big question is, why would you be going indoors now anyway? I know it's been snowing and it's been quite cold of late, but we're moving hopefully to a situation where we'll be more outdoors than indoors. However, hot off the press, indoor guidance is being worked on by the facilities services team, and hopefully to have that issued tomorrow.
Right, so we look forward to that. So by the time this is the airways, we'll actually try and put it out with the show notes when this comes out. And that is indoor activity. Just to stress, that is for people in the under 18 age group and below, and that is age group, not calendar date. So indoor is okay under the circumstances on which the government outline for under 18s, but not for adults at the moment. So again, we'll hopefully include something in the notes on that. Just to sort of wrap up and have a look at things and have a look at the general situation. Then it's obviously been a really big planning phase for clubs, and people are really keen to get out there, which we all understand. But just maybe the message is, can we do it safely?
I think cricket by what we do is naturally a socially distant sport anyway, to be honest with you. As long as we play by the rules and as long as we adhere to the guidelines, and umpires will be obviously integral within that. Groundskeepers have been fantastic as well in terms of the hard work that they've done, all the officials and that sort of thing that go with it. But as long as we play by the rules, I think hopefully things will start to ease off in June or July. There is some reservations, I guess, around another spike in COVID-related cases as we move into the latter part of the summer, going into the autumn. Hopefully by then our season will be well and truly finished and we have had a good season, and the challenge then moves on to other sports, maybe winter sports, but hopefully not. Hopefully by then everybody will have their vaccinations and we should be hopefully back to nearing business as normal. But some people will find it a challenge being outside in large groups of people again. Cricketers are cricketers, they get used to playing in their bubbles, but for spectators and people going to watch, it might seem a bit alien to start with, but hopefully life will return to some sense of normality soon. Yeah,
and I think that all of us who love and play cricket, we know that is probably quite a big part of our lives and our sort of satisfaction, along with families, home, etc., etc. It goes without saying. Well, obviously, it probably does go without saying too often, and so I've just managed to pop this in there as well. Just finally, I think I know that we're going to be meeting up again on the date of our AGM, which is going to go out on the 7th from 7 p.m. on the 22nd of April. So there are just a couple of things that you'll be heading up for there. So firstly, I'm sure that there will still be questions around the guidance, and at the very least we can field them on the day and take them in. And if we can't find the answer straight away, then we'll go away and come back. So I'm sure there will still be questions as people start to open their sites up. The second thing that you'll be coming to talk to us about is a new set of guidance coming out from ECB about creating welcoming environments and sort of attached funding. So that's maybe something people can look forward to in the coming days and weeks.
Yeah. At the moment, we're just doing 2 mop-up sessions on creating welcoming environments guidance for county board staff. I think, Simon, you've been involved. I think you've been to one workshop anyway. So we're just mopping those up at the moment, which will be early part of next week. Once that's done, then there'll be a communications package to get that guidance out to the whole cricket network. It is very good stuff. I would say that, wouldn't I, because I work for the ECB, but I think it's pretty good. And hopefully we'll give clubs a pretty good steer as to what they can do and how they can do it and how best to look at a particular project and work with the county board. Underpinning this, of course, is the county grant fund. That will be coming. There has been a further delay on it, and we have a recreational game call, I think, yes we do, on the 21st of April, when further information will be cascaded about other support to the network that's likely to come. The message from me at the moment is that there is more money coming into the recreational game. It's just unfortunate I can't tell you what that potentially might look like, because it's waiting for sign off and that sort of thing. But the county grant fund will be back, will be coming, and with the initial focus for county boards and for me as your facilities planning manager will be the quick wins. So those clubs who have a project, have it worked out, ready to go, and we can support those as quickly as possible.
Well, great. That's something to look forward to. We will do our level best to get the business side of the AGM out as quickly as possible, done in say 20 to 25 minutes, and then we've got some exciting stuff, including news of the Creating Welcoming Environments and Grants Fund coming out. So, so just to conclude, thanks very much for joining us today, Neil. Hopefully clubs find this helpful. If anyone has any questions, first of all, go to ecb.co.uk/COVID-19. And also email myself, simon.jones@gsbol.com, or give me a call 07920452537 with any queries, and I'll see if I can find out the answer to you. But Neil, thanks very much for joining us today, and we'll see you at our AGM.
Pleasure. If not before, Simon. Take care. All the best.
Cheers.
Cheers.